Hi, I'm Terrell Boston Smith. I am serving as the chair of this committee. Other members want to go by, and staff members, please introduce yourselves too. Let's start with Erin. Do you want to start?
Erin O'Keefe, Commissioner, member of this committee. I will pass it to Vic.
I'm Vic Turvila. I'm the chair of the commission. Julianne? I'm not hearing anybody. Julianne, you wanna introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm so sorry. My kid is running over here. That's why I was so distracted. Julianne Tarver, and I'm a lawyer, and this is my son Kellen, and you'll be seeing a lot of them. That's Brad. Thanks.
I'll hop in. Good evening, everyone. Joshua Harris, equity and civil rights advocate. I'm a commissioner from District 9, and I'm trying to see if I can see who else is on to pass it, to popcorn it to. Can't see. I'll pass it to Matt Stegman. I saw Matt in Annapolis today.
Yeah, indeed you did. Matt Stegman, member of the commission, guest for this subcommittee meeting, and I will go over to Timothy.
Thanks, Matt. Good evening, everybody. Tim Goldsby, Assistant Deputy Comptroller and serving as staff to the commission and this committee. I'll pass it over to Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. Stephanie Murdoch, Director of Legislative Services for DHCD. I am not on the commission. I should probably be in this meeting as an attendee. I'm just listening in to see what great work is coming ahead. So thank you.
All right.
Sorry, I think I was supposed to pass it on.
Elsewhere. Ben, did you introduce yourself?
No, not yet. Ben Guthorn, Acting Director of the Department of Legislative Reference. I'm staff to the commission.
Okay. All right, I think that's everyone. Did I miss anyone?
Aaron DeGraffenreid.
Okay. We've got Aaron on the telephone. Aaron's with the City Council.
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? This is Aaron DeGraffenreid, staff representing the council.
Okay. Anybody else? Did I miss anyone?
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep, we heard you. Anyone else? Did we miss anyone else? Comptroller, would you ready to proceed?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. I didn't know if you wanted me to just dive in or if there was any other business of the committee before I presented, but if I'm being given the floor, I will happily take it and hold it for an extended period of time.
Yes, please.
My staff has encouraged me to use a PowerPoint to give some framework to my presentation, but I will preface it by saying I do really appreciate the work of the Charter Review Commission. I want to thank all of you, not just the ones that I had the opportunity to ask to serve, but also to all of you that are doing this. The Baltimore City Charter is an incredibly important document. It literally structures what we how we run government, and 99% of our neighbors and friends here in the city probably manage to go through their entire lives without having a deep down realization of how important the work that you're doing is going to be for them. So on their behalf, I thank you for your service. The Comptroller's Office would like to present a number of recommendations or proposals to the Charter Review Commission specifically for this committee. And actually, am I allowed to share my screen? I am. So specifically for this committee, for Board of Estimates Finance Procurement, we have the following recommendations. First of all, just as a sort of explanation, I'll give a brief summary, and then we have the text of the specific amendment has been included. I think all of you have copies of this, but just in case, I'm going through. The first recommendation is a change to the composition of the Board of Estimates itself. I'm sure I don't have to tell any of you how it's currently set up. But 4 years ago, when the council last did something close to a large examination of the charter, there was a great deal of discussion around a proposal to remove the two votes on the council that report to the mayor. That ended up not coming to a vote in the committee or in the council, but it has continued to be a question that many people have asked, which is, should the Board of Estimates be a body in which the mayor simply automatically always has sufficient votes to pass or defeat whatever the mayor wishes to pass or defeat? This recommendation would remove one of the so-called mayor's votes, the Director of Public Works, and replace them with the City Council Vice President, and also establish the Comptroller formally as Secretary to the Board, a role that the past, as far as I know, my entire life, the Comptrollers have served in that role, but this would be formalizing it. The benefit of using the Council Vice President as a fifth vote on the Board of Estimates rather than the Director of Public Works is twofold. One, it eliminates the mayor having an automatic majority, but the other thing that it does is it gives the entire City Council a voice on the Board of Estimates. Right now, the people often say that the council president represents the City Council on the board, but that's not entirely accurate, given that the City Council president is elected at large by the voters of Baltimore City, and not selected, as with many legislative bodies, by the body itself. The Council Vice President, on the other hand, is elected by the other members of the City Council. And so if the Council Vice President had a vote on the Board of Estimates, then there actually would be the opportunity for the council collectively to have participation in what really is a very important body in terms of the topics that it takes up and the funds that it allocates. I think what I would prefer to do, if it's okay with the chair, is I'm happy to stop and have discussion on a item by item case, unless you would prefer I go through all of them and then we stop and go back and discuss the individual recommendations. Mr. Chair, what is your pleasure?
I'm sorry, what are the options again?
I can either pause after each recommendation and take questions if anybody has any, or I can just push through the entire presentation and then we can open it up for a wider ranging conversation about all of them collectively.
Let's do that, unless someone disagrees. So if anyone on the committee disagrees, please speak up.
Okay, all right. And then, so that's the first recommendation. Oh, I'm sorry. There was an added, I don't know whether this would count as a benefit per se, but on a completely separate topic, we are currently, the city is participating in a regional water governance task force process in which we are looking at how we govern the water and wastewater system that the city owns and which serves several of the subdivisions in our region. One of the potential recommendations of that task force would involve separating out what is currently the Bureau of Water and Wastewater from the Department of Public Works, and having it return to being a standalone agency, at which point there is a question of whether the Department of Public Works would continue to exist having only the Bureau of Sanitation in it, or whether that would simply be an opportunity to separate Public Works into a Department of Sanitation and a Department of Water and Wastewater and Stormwater. Either way, there is a fair chance that there would no longer be a Director of Public Works, which means that the charter would have to be adjusted to place somebody else as the fifth member of the Board of Estimates. And so that's where this recommendation comes into play. Moving on, this is the specific text change. As you can see, it's fairly straightforward. That would be required to make this recommendation happen. Moving on to the second recommendation, the suggestion is that we use the charter to codify the fact that 4 members of the board constitute a quorum. Currently, we have rules and regs for the Board of Estimates that list 5 members of the board as a quorum, but there have been concerns about that because if all 5 members of the board are required for a quorum, then theoretically, one person, by not showing up and having whoever their replacement or a formal designee is, by having them not show up, the business of the board could not be conducted. And so the thought would be that if we required in the charter that 4 members constitute a quorum, and then we would adjust the rules accordingly, that would ensure that there would not simply be, we were trying to avoid having just the 3 members that are the mayor or work for the mayor in and of themselves be a quorum, because if 3 members of the board constituted a quorum, then that would mean the mayor, the council president, and the comptroller could never have any type of non-open meeting conversation. But 4 members of the board as quorum would allow the 3 citywide elected officials to still be able to have discussions. I think that was all for that one. And here is, that was the text for it. You can go back and look in your copies if you're interested in specifics. Then the third recommendation was to transition bid opening responsibility to the Bureau of Procurement. While I don't know that I would go so far as to say that this is a best practice everywhere, it is actually common that the Bureau of Procurement handles all aspects of the bid process. At some point in the past, Baltimore City moved to a system where the bids were formally opened in public by the Board of Estimates members on the same day that they had a Board of Estimates meeting. We've already transitioned away from that, partly because of the pandemic and the inability to have people come into City Hall to participate, but also as we are trying to transition more and more of the work of city government to work that can be done electronically, which allows it to be not only in some cases done cheaper and easier, but near and dear to my heart, it can be done more openly and more transparently. If it's done online, it can be tracked easier and the results shared with the public. Let's see, let me see. This is the text change for it. And again, you can see this, it's a pretty straightforward one. And that is it for my presentation. So at this point, Mr. Chair, I will cease sharing my screen and ask if there are any questions.
Would you mind sharing it back? Just I want to go back to the question about the Bureau of Procurement. That may just so folks can ask. That's one that piques my interest.
All right. 1, 2.
And I guess my question is does that by changing that to the Board of Procurement, does that sort of, what's your sense of that? Does that mean that there's additional regulatory requirements, or is there anything that's really distinct in that process, or is it just codifying a process?
I would say, I mean, I can say very plainly that this is all about workflow and workload. Right now, it is the bids come to City Hall, to the Comptroller's office, so that they can be opened, and then they are then moved over to procurement, who then processes them. And it is, an inefficient use of city resources to not just have the bids go directly to procurement. And it is also an issue because there are still some materials that aren't electronic, and then we're talking about sometimes large binders or thick books of contract books that have to be, multiple copies of which have to be transported first to us and then from us over to procurement. And again, with the still the hybrid work environment that we're dealing with, where some of the procurement staff are still working virtually on chunks of the work week, it would just be much more efficient if they all the bids and the materials went straight to the people who are going to be processing them. And procurement is already working on identifying and acquiring software that would let them do the receipt of the bids and open the bids electronically in a fashion to ensure that there's no tampering or messing around with them. So in a lot of ways, this is just the bringing the charter up to speed with where the administration and our office would already like to be going.
Okay.
Bill, would the opening still be, would they be filmed by procurement when they open the build so people can see that if I've submitted a proposal, it's actually being opened and it's not somebody's just tossing it on the side, which is the advantage of having a public opening. Will there be some sort of, visual allowed?
So this is how I hesitate to say most other places, but again, I can say many other places, including the state of Maryland's procurement system, it's all done electronically. So what happens is you submit your bid electronically, and then at a prearranged time, the system just automatically reveals all of the bids to anyone who wants to log in and check the website. So there is no physical opening of bids. And one of the reasons that the timing of this with the Charter Review Commission works out well is by the time you're able to go through your process, and if you pass this along to the council and they approve it, and it goes on the ballot, and the voters approve it to go into effect next year, at that point, that would give procurement all the time it needs to finish acquiring the software to actually implement it.
Good, thank you. I have questions about your first proposal. So, I understand what you said about the possibility of reorganizing the Department of Public Works is huge. And of course, it has a great impact on what we're doing with this particular proposal. And so that's amazing because the Department of Public Works really deals with most of the big, huge public works contracts. So when I see your proposal here, Bill, when you're basically taking out one of the, basically the way I look at the BOE, it's basically involved with contracts. And the major party that deals with contracts is the Department of Public Works. And you're replacing that individual with a politician who basically, don't know much about contracts. And I'm not talking about this particular vice president, but basically in general, you get elected and you don't know much about government. You don't know much about contracts. You learn about things in your district, but the absolute expertise that come with someone who is a professional who's been dealing, and now as a department director, who's been dealing with contracts probably their entire public life, now is being replaced with a politician who knows nothing about contracts. So it's a little concerning to me, although I do understand that if we reorganize the Department of Public Works, and maybe that certainly waters down that activity, but nonetheless, we have a politician.
Waters down, that's good. That's good, I like that. Well, first of all, I understand the concern. I will point out that not even in my lifetime, but in my active engagement with city government, I have watched the Department of Public Works go from being the bureaus of water and wastewater, sanitation, general services, and transportation. I have watched the Transportation Bureau leave and take with it all of its extensive contracts. I have watched General Services leave and take with it a lot of its larger contracts and work. So I'm not particularly disturbed by the fact that public works would be smaller. I'm more focused on the fact that it has not been my experience over the last, we'll call it 15 years, that the director of public works, whoever they are, is a substantive contributor to discussion at the board level so often that it is important that they be a member in order to contribute their subject matter expertise. I'll note in passing that I was confused. Let me put it this way. I was confused for many years as to why the director of finance was not on the Board of Estimates, given they're the director of finance, they're the CFO for the city. Why would you not have the director of finance as the person, as one of the people who was helping to make all of these financial decisions on a regular basis? Turns out that there wasn't a director of finance until 60 years ago. And the director of finance oversaw a bunch of agencies who used to work for the comptroller, and the comptroller was on the board to represent the financial side of city operations. So I'm comfortable saying sometimes these things need to evolve. There is nothing that keeps the future. If this should happen, if water and wastewater should resume its status as a freestanding organization, there is nothing keeping the director of water and wastewater from attending meetings with the same regularity that right now the director of finance comes to every meeting, even though they don't have a spot on the board and they rarely have to present for anything specific. They're there as a resource. The city administrator, if we had a city administrator when the Board of Estimates was originally being composed, perhaps it would have made more sense for the city administrator to be on the board, considering all of these agencies technically report to them. And for what it's worth, I would encourage the commission to have that kind of conversation. We've made changes to how city government works, and we haven't always looked comprehensively at what those changes really mean. So if you wanted to say that maybe if there was no director of public works, it would make more sense to have the city administrator there, I would agree. That would be if the goal is to maintain having the mayor have control of the Board of Estimates, I agree that the city administrator would make a great replacement for the director of public works. But I wanted to make this recommendation also to reinvigorate the conversation of, is it a good thing for the running of city government for the mayor never to have to get some other citywide official to have to support them in order to get their agenda across at the state level? That is the way that the Board of Public Works works. Is the governor is the executive, the governor runs everything. Everybody knows that the governor is in charge, but the governor's got to get either the comptroller or the state treasurer who represents the legislature to buy into anything controversial. And not to put too fine a point on it, but we just saw a very important ip last year where with the conduit deal that the city ended up doing with BG&E, where with all due respect, there was not another elected official in City Hall who supported that deal. But under the structure we have right now, there was apparently no way to keep it from happening. And that just strikes me as very anti-democratic.
You're so thoughtful, Bill, and I appreciate all of this. But my concern is that the BOE really is an administrative body. You put your vice president in there of the city council. Now you have four politicians. It's no longer really an administrative body. It's a political body at this point. And you can probably, the argument here would be, the response would be it's already a political body. We're just adding more to it. And you know how well it works now with the three of you, working together.
Vic, you know what? I hear what you're saying. I gotcha. If you want, I can switch the recommendation so that instead of the council vice president, it's the deputy controller. So there would still be 2 administrative members of the board and only 3 elected officials. But my gut tells me that's not going to accomplish what you think it would. So
it's theoretical.
When you say it's mostly an administrative body, if it's mostly an administrative body, it's already a majority of elected officials.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I would call it an administrative body. I know that it likes to market itself as a deliberative body, even though the outcome is preordained. And that is honestly what I'm trying to accomplish here. Is I'm trying to take away. I'm not sure if what the grammatical construction would be. If you have the expression "the fix is in," I'm trying to take the fix out and have it actually be a deliberative body, where the mayor would have an agenda. The mayor would make a case. The mayor would have an automatic second for anything they wanted to propose, because the city solicitor would still be on the board, but the mayor would have to get either the council president, another citywide elected official, the comptroller, another citywide elected official, or the council vice president, who theoretically represents the entire, city council membership. Somebody else would have to agree this is where the city should go. And I understand that it is mostly an administrative body. I am as aware as anyone of the percentage of decisions that are made on the consent agenda, and are simply, we're just checking this off. And for what it's worth, we've got some procurement transformation work coming, which I think will be added to your plate in terms of it will require its own fairly extensive changes to code and charter for procurement systems. But one very basic one is going to be a raising of thresholds, monetary thresholds, in an effort to remove or I guess reduce the amount of just regular ordinary work that just has to be done as part of the day-to-day operations of the city. Reduce that from the BOE's agenda. But periodically, and I'm not going to say every day, but there are regularly important policy issues that are coming to the Board of Estimates to be addressed. And they're not always obvious as policy issues, but they are often examples or precedents that will effectively end up setting policy. And when those come along, it's hard to separate them out and say, this is too important to just go to an administrative body. This should go to a true deliberative body. Because at the end of the day, the only true deliberative body we have is the city council. And I think I can just speak plainly when I say it has always been a real effort to get any more power ascribed to the city council than what's already in the charter. And it would be easier to make the Board of Estimates the deliberative body that it pretends to be than it would be to try to give more and carefully circumscribed power to the city council.
Well, thank you. That's really very, very thoughtful, Bill, and I appreciate that. I guess ultimately it's probably my theory of how that body should work as opposed to actually how it does work. But I appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Awesome. Other questions?
I have another question about the next proposal, since we're on that. And my screen is off. Hold on.
Erin O'Keefe had her hand up, but I didn't know if she didn't put it back up because her question got answered.
I don't even remember what it was anymore.
Well, I want you to know,
just,
I
folks,
remembered that you had your hand up.
So I can't see. I've got this on my phone and I have this on the screen, so I'm not able to see if hands are raised. So if you have a question or you want to speak, just sort of speak up and jump in, and we'll recognize it that way.
Well, in the silence, I'll step in again, and I'm sorry. But I'm looking at your text change for the second thing, the quorum piece, which I have a problem about recusing. Remember, it says members recusing themselves on matters shall arrange for a substitute as designated in the charter to participate in consideration on the matter to achieve a quorum. The reason why you recuse yourself is because you have a conflict of interest. And if you put your substitute in, let's suppose you want to go for option A, Bill, but you have a conflict of interest. So you can't go, but you have your deputy come in and you say, deputy, I'd really like you to vote for item A. And the idea that we are somehow, isolating or we're bidding away from the conflict of interest, or maybe we're just hiding it at that point because you have your substitute, you have your designated representative come in and basically vote the same way you would vote. How do we get around that problem?
That's actually a fairly easy one. We've already set up a mechanism to deal with that, which is we collect abstention lists every meeting from all the members. And so, for example, if the mayor habitually abstains from matters involving Johns Hopkins because of a family conflict. So any item involving Johns Hopkins on the agenda is always shows up on the abstention list as the mayor is abstaining from this. In a meeting where, for whatever reason, the mayor is not there, and either the city administrator or some other staff person, the director of finance sometimes sits in for the mayor, we then collect a separate abstention list from them. So I say that to say that even if in the case of a recusal for a particular item, technically we would still know that, well, I'm sorry, I guess what the issue is not that it would change, it wouldn't change the fact that the item would still pass, but everyone would know that there was a conflict and it would simply pass anyway, which, for lack of a better explanation, already happens now. That's not changing anything from current practice. Like right now, the situation you just described, that situation could happen any week with any of the 5 members. The reason we're clearly articulating it is to make certain that it's clear that if the council president doesn't want to show up for a meeting for some reason, if they're against something that's about to happen, they want to recuse themselves, the charter would now be making it clear it's your responsibility to make sure the council vice president shows up in your place because they're your designee. That is actually that I thought you would raise that issue with the other one, which is if both the council president and the vice president are separately voting members on the Board of Estimates, then they would have to be granted the same power that right now both the mayor and I have, which is we can just send a staff person in our absence if we can't be there, But right now, the council president is the only one who isn't allowed to do that and has to send another elected official.
Well, so as I understand it here, though, Bill, you're saying when we're talking about a recusal, you're not talking about you were just absent, in which case, there's an issue there. But here's you're accusing yourself. I can't vote on this thing, but my designee can vote for me. So why doesn't just it didn't pass. The item didn't pass because you didn't have a majority, whatever the majority would be in this particular situation. Why do we have to have anybody show up and vote for you, which you may have already told them to vote for option A?
I'm going to take this opportunity to just mention to Terrell that Matt Stegman has his hand up virtually so that you can call on Matt. But since it's unlikely that Matt is going to answer for me, what I'll continue with is that I would be happy to check this. And actually, I don't know, maybe Ben Guthorn, did you work with my staff on the text change for this?
And Matt, do you want to jump in right after, please?
No, I need the reason I wanted to ask is there's Casey. Casey,
I can clarify.
Yeah, is this about the law department's response to the conduit votes?
No,
Okay.
So I have to relook at the text. I'm sorry if it's confusing. The intention was that also, hi everyone, Casey Kelleher, Director of Policy and Communications for Comptroller Henry. The intention of this was to make sure that every other member of the board besides the mayor, had the same ability to send a designee in their space for vote. So currently the mayor and the council president have that ability to send a designee. The mayor can send basically anyone he or she deems to vote on their behalf. The council president can send the vice president, but the rest of members of the board do not have the ability to send people in case they can't attend. So that is what we were trying to clarify in this partially.
I thought I thought we could all send deputies.
Your deputy can vote on this, but I can double check that. But
okay, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Bill. I'll leave it there.
Hey, this is Matt Stegman. So pardon my my ignorance since I'm not a member of this subcommittee, and I'm just kind of getting caught up on this. But would the effect of this proposal be to have every item for which there is a recusal or an abstention kind of by necessity be moved to the non-routine BOE agenda? I mean, I know some of the other proposals. Okay, yeah. Can you explain why? If I'm misunderstanding.
Well, I guess it's kind of the other way around. I don't understand why you would be concerned about that. It doesn't affect whether something is on non-routine or not. Non-routine is just somebody on the board wants to, has questions about it and wants to talk about it. There's no quorum connection to the non-routine agenda.
Okay, I may be misunderstanding the proposal. I guess just if you have a if you required this to have a alternate vote on any items that you're just practically how would that be noted? Because a lot of time there's tons of items that are on the routine agenda and they're just noted in the notes as they passed 4-0 with somebody had abstained, and I know your office collects and publishes the memos for members of the board on the items they're abstaining on.
So I'm seeing, okay, it says 4 members of the board or the members' designees as specified in the charter constitute a quorum. If a member abstains on a matter, that member will still count toward the quorum.
Okay.
Members.
So it's a distinction between a recusal and an abstention.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I understand now. I think a lot of times, the practice of the board has been to use those interchangeably. But I do understand the distinction now. Thank you.
As I have been trying to consciously not use working remotely and working virtually interchangeably, because it turns out working remotely actually means you never ever come into the office and you just live somewhere else. And that is not a practice that we generally have in city government.
Can I just ask a question on that, Vic, really to sort of mentally flag that if that's something we need to pay attention to in the rest of the charter as well, if we're using them interchangeably?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I mean, it's all in the language here, so we have to be very careful about that stuff. So thanks.
This may just be my ignorance, and Terrell, if someone else had a question, please say that. But as I read this, one of the things I'm wondering, is this, Vic, is this ordinary that the operating rules of the Board of Estimates is included in the charter? Because this sort of seems like a rule rather than necessarily a constitutional direction.
It's not including the rules in the charter. There are already rules and regs, but that was the charter was silent about them, as the charter is silent towards the issue of a quorum. And the previous city solicitor, Jim Shea, his opinion was, well, the charter doesn't say we can't do rules and regs. And I'm not sure if I'm using his exact phraseology, but he said he believed the charter envisioned the Board of Estimates always working as a body of the whole, and that's why he assumed that quorum should be 5. It wasn't until the issue was raised around the conduit disagreement that no one had even considered the idea that if quorum is 5, then you could stop the business of the Board of Estimates simply by not going. Now that's not going to happen if you're the mayor, and it's not going to happen if you're the city solicitor or the director of public works, because the only thing that's going to happen at the Board of Estimates is what you want to happen. But it does mean that it left the comptroller and the council president presumably in the position where simply by not going and encouraging your replacement not to go, you could stop the work of the board. And so this was intended to try to address that. It still would mean that if both the comptroller and the council president didn't show up, there wouldn't be quorum. But that would then mean that apparently this issue is so controversial that either of the other 2 citywide elected officials think it's a good idea. But we really thought it was important not to go any lower and set a quorum officially of 3, partly because it means that the mayor and the council president and the comptroller can never have conversations, but also it means that the mayor can never have a staff meeting. The mayor could never have a cabinet meeting if they can't, if the mayor, the mayor, the city solicitor, and the director of public works make up a quorum of the board, then they would never be able to have their own private meetings, which I imagine would be potentially very disruptive to the operations of city government. So that's why we thought 4 was a reasonable compromise.
Who's on from the law department? Is that Ben? Do you count for that, or is that someone else?
I think Vic counts as that.
I think, well, no, but I can't serve that. And so it's going to be Ben, because I don't see a law department rep here, but so it'll be Ben.
Was there a, so I'm now reminded of the issue that this is regarding. Was there a legal opinion or a letter of reference from this? Like, how did you, when this was happening, how was it discussed, and like, how did you guys handle it? Like, if you're mentioning that the solicitor said that, hey, we counted as 3, was there any opinion presented? I'm just trying to understand it. It makes sense, particularly because of the constitutional officer, but I'm wondering if there's other stuff we should be mindful of or review.
Mr. Chair, I just want to be clear which this you're talking about. Do you mean the conversations around setting up the rules and regs, which is where the quorum conversation first happened? Or do you mean this of the disagreement between the mayor and the administration and my office and the council president's office?
I mean the disagreement, sort of generally, and I'm not thinking specifically, but I'm counting the numbers and I'm remembering sort of like, hey, this makes sense, and sort of understanding it. And so I'm just getting a little depth on it. I'm wondering if there's anything else we should review, because it seems straightforward, but also something to consider.
I think the most honest answer I can give you to that is the law department made several statements that were not universally agreed with, but the charter provides no way to address a disagreement with the city solicitor's opinion of whether or not something meets with the charter. For what it's worth, it is my intention to come back to you with a suggestion that there be some type of process in the charter that allows people to appeal an opinion or determination by the city solicitor to the circuit court, just as other decisions of city officials are currently appealable to the circuit court.
You know, that's interesting, Bill. In my experience, you guys just ignored when you didn't like the opinion you got. You basically ignored it. So why do we need something formal now? But it's interesting.
Terrell, this is Ben Guthorn with Legislative Reference. To clarify, my department is not part of the law department, and we are not entitled to deliver legal opinions on behalf of the city. I can certainly do research to determine whether or not there was a formal opinion issued, but I myself cannot speak to that. I will say separately that with respect to decisions made by the executive versus the legislative branch versus the comptroller, which is arguably part of the executive branch, but maybe not, but it could be, and then the BOE, which is its own body, but nonetheless is probably also part of the executive branch. There's a question of, what's the purpose of each of these branches and how do they relate to one another, and how do the people understand the powers that are wielded by each of these branches. To make it more global and to abstract it just a little bit, so we're not talking about anyone in particular, there's a question about efficiency of government and how executive decisions are to be made and how that should be balanced against the interest in oversight and transparency, which is typically wielded by the legislative branch. The comptroller mentioned earlier that 60 years ago or so, the comptroller used to be part of the Department of Finance and had been before that. The comptroller would like to disagree with me.
There was no Department of Finance prior to the Charter Review Commission of '64. There were simply items on. Oh, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the section in the charter for finance, but it wasn't technically a Department of Finance. It was just an organizational structure for the document. But they called it something else. It wasn't article, and it wasn't department.
So it was the first part of Article 7 at that time.
Was it article? Okay, it was Article 7. Okay.
But that aside, I just want to bring perspective that the broader conversation point with the BOE and who sits on it is who has what power. And I want to circle back to what the comptroller originally posited at the front, kind of bouncing off of the conduit conversation is, ought the mayor have a de facto check mark on all of their actions that they're bringing to the BOE, or through other mechanisms, should there be some sort of check on that power? And I believe the proposal to put some sort of check on that power is to take away one of the seats controlled by the mayor, in this instance, the director of the Department of Public Works, and add another member of the legislative branch, the vice president of the council. So you would have some sort of equality between executive and legislative, and then the comptroller by default would be, the 50-50 vote in the instance where those two parties disagreed. So that's kind of the general picture of what we're talking about, and the degree to which, the people think whomever should have a say in certain administrative decisions. I think, that's all worth the conversation as well.
This is Aaron DeGraff, and I wanted just to chime in to answer the chair's question that there was at least one law department opinion that we got regarding the what constitutes a quorum for the Board of Estimates, and their determination that 3 was satisfactory, and that the gist of it was that, similar to what the comptroller outlined earlier, that the law department concluded that having the quorum be 5 in the rules and regulations of the Board of Estimates undermined the charter intent that there be allowed to advance the work of the board with this current makeup. So I think there may have been 2 opinions that were related, but there's certainly one that was on point to this question.
If I could also add in that just for the purposes of discussion, it might be worthwhile not to assume in the recommended structure that I've proposed, not to assume that the council president and the council vice president will automatically vote as a unit. Unlike the mayor and the city solicitor, or the mayor and the director of public works, the council vice president is not an employee of the council president, and is a separately elected official with their their own agenda and their own agency. We have a tendency sometimes to assume that the now has been forever, and while for the last 10 or 15 years it has generally been a partnership arrangement where the council president and the council vice president worked fairly well together. When I first started working in City Hall was a period of time where the council vice president was considered to be the floor leader for the mayor. And the mayor took an active role in helping to whip votes so that their person would get elected as vice president. So I don't want to imply that moving that seat from the director of public works to the council vice president automatically gives the council president more power. What it does is it moves some of the power of the mayor into a separately into a separate spot, and that's where the mayor and the city solicitor would have the opportunity to go to the council president, the council vice president, or the comptroller looking for their third vote in any given scenario. I just wanted to add that to the conversation. And
thank you.
As you probably are about to tell us, Mr. Chair, I am past my original time, and so I'm gonna ask if there are any other final questions before I have to take my leave of all of you.
Thank you so much for a great presentation.
Thank you. And please,
just making sure before you jump, was there anyone else who had a question that didn't? I'm looking for hands and I don't see anything. So if you do, please speak up.
Yeah. And if other questions should arise later in your conversation, Tim and or Casey will be here, and we will make sure that we get you a response as quickly as possible if neither of them are able to answer the question. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
All right, cool. All right. Whoa, that was a lot. Everybody want to take a deep breath? Any questions so far?
Hey, Terrell, I just have a quick question for Aaron
Sure.
on the subject. So just to get my facts in my own head straight, when the comptroller was talking about recommending 4 instead of 3, because if it was 3, the Open Meetings Act would mandate essentially that those 3 individuals on the Board of Estimates could never really have a private meeting. But then we also heard, Aaron, that was the opinion of the law department. And so that's what's in practice right now. Can someone just demystify that for me?
What I took from that, and let me just jump in, Aaron, maybe because let me just jump in. So what I took from what was said is that the law department opined that if the Board of Estimate was going to meet, a quorum was going to be 5 members. So it couldn't be anything less, because if it was 3 members, for example, if the mayor and I guess the solicitor and the director of public works got together, that would be a quorum. That would be a quorum, and they could never have a private meeting. So they could never have a private meeting because it would be a quorum of the BOE, and in which case they would have to have it would have to be a public meeting. And of course the solicitor and the mayor and the director of public works meet all the time, have nothing to do with the Board of Estimates. They're meeting on other issues. So the bottom line is they're being constrained. If we had a quorum of 3 members, we would have a problem with the basic operation of meeting with certain officials, certain department heads. So that's how I understood what was going on. And
that's not what was reported, Vic. I guess I'm sorry. I'm very confused.
Yes. Can I just jump in? So it's not quite that way. I'll say it this way. The law department's opinion regarding the quorum for Board of Estimates meetings did not touch on Open Meetings Act issues with respect to what we're talking about, where the mayor, the solicitor, and director of DPW would be meeting about non-BOE issues in other department head meetings and things of that nature. The law department's opinion didn't address that, didn't touch that at all, wasn't the nature of the question. So it was kind of outside the scope of what was being asked of them at the time. But the conclusion of their opinion was that the board had a quorum to conduct its business with 3 members present. And that was what that constituted again, a quorum to conduct the business of the board. And so it didn't consider like the implications of that beyond the board advancing city contracts and things of that nature.
Can we pause for just a second? So Aaron, did you summarize everything that you needed to say?
Yes.
Okay. So we've got 15 minutes. I think we said we'd go to 7. I think we can go a little bit longer if folks need to. But I just want to make sure that, Aaron, does that answer your question? Does that sort of provide you some guidance what you were asking?
It doesn't.
Okay.
I think it helps a little and it scares the crap out of me. So I'll just leave it at that.
So I want to be, but hold on. I just want to be clear that I'm understanding that. So the law department said that 3 members constitutes a quorum. That's the bottom line out of the law department. Is that correct, Aaron?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
And remember, this was partially. I mean, there's a political issue at play when we talk about this question. There was a question about whether, if I recall correctly, Matt and Ben and Aaron, if you recall, there was some of the constitutional officers didn't want this to move along. The question was, well, whether the 3 folks that were a part of the executive department could be present, and that constituted a quorum for them to move an issue forward. Is that right? Am I summarizing that well?
Yeah, I think that's accurate because there's arguments over whether or not business can move forward without the other members present.
Okay, so this let's just pause this one here. Ben, you're taking notes, right?
I am.
Can you note that this is, if just with the dash, that this is an issue we probably want to hear from the mayor's office and probably the city council president's office too, just to get some clarity about where we move forward with this one. So I just want to get a pause for the committee and sort of check in and see, hey, we talking about Article 4, sort of Article 6. This is 6. Yes, 6. We on the agenda, we had talking about Article 6. I wondered if we should pause, sort of get a sense of where we are and think about now, what are our next steps and what do we come back to and how we organize ourselves forward. The other thing is that we also have the committee report, the minutes. So I wanted to walk through that and make sure we summarize appropriately where we are and organize our next steps. Does that make sense? Everybody in agreement for that? All right, Aaron, I see a thumbs up for you. Josh, you're good with that? I think Josh dropped
Yeah,
off.
that works. Yep,
Okay.
I'm sorry,
All right,
that
cool.
works.
All right, perfect. And anybody else that I didn't? Julianne, are you good with that?
I'm good.
Okay. All right. So Ben emailed out the notes, I think, and so Aaron, I see you added some thoughts, and let's just go through and make sure that we're all in agreement with that. Hey Ben, I know folks have been on there, but a couple people have missed, haven't been here. Is there anything extra we should be doing to reach out to them?
You members of this committee, you mean?
Yes, members of this committee. I've sent an email. We sent an email sort of as a collective. You set the appointment. Is there anything else we need to do just to make sure folks aren't missing?
No, I think it's incumbent on commissioners to attend. They provided their own email address and their own phone number, and they participate at their convenience.
Okay, terrific. All right, so we've got everything on this first page clear. All right, any thoughts about the discussion? Got these bi-weekly meetings. We sort of broke it down. Anything we're missing? And then if we can go to page, and if you see anything, please either make a note or speak up. I'm looking at the screen and I've got this in my phone. So if you have your hand raised, I may not see you. So just speak on up, please. I'm on page 3. And if we can just check in under agency presentations, because I think this was helpful to have the comptroller present, but now it gives us some sense of like, what do we do next and how do we incorporate the other considerations, particularly with this massive article. And Aaron, thank you for just dropping in the link in the chat if anyone needs that. Ooh. All right, any thoughts so far on the notes?
I make a recommendation that we approve them as written.
All right, any second thoughts? Do we need, this could be a random question. Do we need to approve as if this were like orders, or do we just sort of say, hey, this is approved and move along?
If nobody objects, there's no need to take a roll call. You can just basically adopt them by not saying anything.
Okay, cool. I approve. I mean, I'm good. Anybody else have thoughts? Josh, did you want to jump in?
I was just going to say I thought it was for information purposes only. But.
Okay, terrific.
Daddy. Yes, we are committed to sending them out to the rest of the commission. So information purposes and sharing the information beyond just us.
All right, cool. So any objections, please say so now. Hearing none, we can move forward. All right, so under page 3, agency presentations. So we just got Article 6. I mean, I think this was really helpful hearing from the comptroller, but as I sort of went through it before, and then as I glanced through now, there are lots of other considerations. So how should we, I'm more concerned about sort of hearing from the mayor's office and probably finance about this article particularly. So, does that make sense? Am I missing anything? Is that perspective okay? And does that perspective seem accurate? That's a question. And if you agree or disagree, let me know.
I agree.
I guess I'm just wondering around from a process perspective. I know Ben Guthorn, you had some thoughts on sort of reaching. We were going to send like an email out to agencies and invite them to share. I know you had a lot of other things that you and Vic were sort of trying to coordinate in terms of communications. So,
hey Chezzy, I see your Oren. Would you be able to help us make the connection to the agencies if we need to hear from them? So like we just heard from comptroller. I imagine we want to hear from the mayor's office and the finance department and sort of get a sense of, hey, we just went through Article 6. What else do you think about this? And sort of coming forward. Does that make sense? Chezzy, are you there? All right. Maybe
I'm here. I'm trying to get off mute. Sorry.
Don't we all know that experience?
So yes, just send a correspondence and we'll pass it along.
Okay, terrific. Ben, can we do that? Is that do you want me to? Ben, can we talk tomorrow and sort of figure out how we'll do that?
Yes. So from last meeting, I think there was conversation around establishing a certain kind of form solicitation for thoughts or suggestions regarding the charter and their specific provisions. But I'm happy to set that up with you, and we can circulate it to committee, or we can just push it out. Deference to efficiency and time, certainly.
Let's chat tomorrow and then sort of send it out. And I think getting a sense. Here's what I'm thinking, and folks, tell me what your sense is. I think since we've got this first one, we start next with we continue with Article 6, get sort of feedback from the mayor's office and the finance department, and invite these other agencies too. But then we also sort of spend, after we've heard from them on this, we then spend another session after we've heard from those two groups, really going through this and seeing if there's anything that we need to make adjustments on.
Charles, just a small modification. Maybe we just ask about, if we're going to reach out to them, can we ask about everything? Because I imagine Vic has to ask about other committees, right? And I wouldn't want to limit us to just Article 6. When I talked to the comptroller's office about Article 5, it really became about Article 6, right? So it wasn't sort of my intention to go beyond what I was assigned, but it just sort of became what it was.
Sure. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I've asked Aaron to assist in reaching out to individual council members to make sure that they're involved, that they give us ideas. What we're looking for at this point are our own ideas, members of the commission who would like to suggest proposals for amendments. We ought to be thinking about those in every chapter we look at. If your membership has interest in a proposal, they should be discussed. And when we reach out to individual departments, and sort of asking the same sort of questions, as well as to the officials. Right now, as I say, we don't have a lot of, this is so wonderful to hear from the comptroller, who actually has given us something to work with. No one else has except members themselves and the comptroller at this point. So that's something to bear in mind. I think as you go forward, Terrell, just be sure you're soliciting from your own membership ideas about what they would like to see in terms of change, assuming that they have ideas for change and where they may want to go.
All right. just taking a gander and make sure I didn't miss anything. Erin, did they have any other comments like on the real estate section or anything else?
The comptroller's office?
Mm-hmm.
No, those are the ones for our committee that they recommended. They do have thoughts to discuss with the other committees like legislative, et cetera. And I believe, and Tim, you're on here, so maybe just jump in. I believe you're going to talk to Vic and those committee chairs. Is that correct, Tim Goldsby?
That's correct, Aaron. Those other recommendations will be shared with the respective chairpersons of those committees. But this was what was presented tonight was all for as it pertains to this committee.
Okay. So I guess I'm going to ask the group, how should we then go about Article 5? Is the sense that do we want to pause and come back and spend next time going to Article 5, sort of being clear that we're done? Should we then invite other folks to talk about it, or the mayor's office? How should we go? How should we handle this? I mean, I have my thoughts, but I want to toss it out as a group and sort of hear and get a sense of what we should do. And Matt, since you've been around places, I'd love to hear your thoughts too about, you know, what comes to mind.
I'm sorry. I feel like I just got called out and I was setting the table for dinner. So I'm sorry. What thoughts would you like to hear?
Oh, not necessarily for you, but for, like, I'm just trying to check in with everyone. So if the comptroller's office didn't have any other changes to Article 5, which is the comptroller's article, I'm wondering how we go about this as a group and whether we do we then just seek feedback from the mayor's office? Do we pause and then go back through this on our own just to make sure there's nothing we want to add? How should we tackle Article 5 since the comptroller for whom this this affects directly most often has sort of didn't have any other recommendations. Just I guess the question is, how do we address Article 5? And that's for everybody too.
Vic, you're on mute.
As I understand it, Aaron, you were the Article 5 guru, as I understand it. So my question to you is, when you were reading this, did something jump out at you as something that is turgid or unexplained, something you would think would be interesting to sort of push forward? What did you have in mind? Did you see anything? Do you have anything in mind?
Great question, Vic. Thanks. I had a conversation with the comptroller's office about it. There was nothing super urgent that they believed was something, you know, we really needed to spend a lot of time on. And it might be a good idea for us to take a look at your recommendations, Vic, from back in 2018. And as a committee, you know, look over those and make sure that there's nothing in there that the previous commission wasn't able to move forward. So on Article 5, I don't think it's something we need to spend a ton of time on, except really review the last commission's thoughts and make to see if there's anything there we want to move forward.
Okay, so we're going to look back at 2018 changes and consider. Okay.
And I think you'll find in tab 2 those proposals for change. I think they're there. They're somewhere there. They're somewhere in our binder, but I think they're in tab 2. So take a look. A lot of it is cutting, I think, which may not interest anybody, but nonetheless, it's worthwhile. I agree with Aaron. It's nice to take a look at it and walk through it.
All right, so that's the next, we can do that. Should we do that at the next meeting? Put that on the agenda for then?
One thing we might want to do is, I think we have a copy of that from Ben in a Word form or maybe a PDF, and we could put it on our Google Drive and folks could comment on those different sections between now and our next meeting of the 2018 recommendations, and that way we can get the conversation started.
Ben, could you do that for us, please? This may be, I may be missing the mark, but 5 under Article 5, Section A, subsection 5, that the comptroller can hold no office for no more than 2 consecutive full terms. Is that new, relatively new?
Yes.
Yes.
It was
that came
the
from
most recent election.
yeah ballot initiative. That's just
Okay. Got it.
And I think can somebody refresh my recollection? Did that ballot amendment still pass with the problematic language that would have potentially prohibited people from running for different offices within a within that time period?
Yeah, great question, Matt.
I know there was a discrepancy between what was on the ballot and what the board of what the board had for and so I don't know if it got cleared up though. I don't recall there ever being any clarification on the difference in what was on the ballot versus the actual proposed language. Yes, baby?
So, I'm just going to say this.
So the language that's currently in the charter as updated with the results of that election is the language that came from the Board of Elections.
Okay. All right.
And if it does, it does not include a particular provision that would prohibit running for other offices. What it says is what it is.
Got it. Okay.
But Matt, are you speaking to a separate ballot initiative, or was that originally included in the discussion of this?
I might be misremembering, but I believe that the as it was, as the proponents circulated the language, I don't know if this was what ultimately got sent to the Board of Elections and approved. I think there was a drafting error that would have prohibited somebody from holding different offices within that 12-year period. So, for example, a member of the city council could not run for, one of the citywide offices if they had already served 2 consecutive terms.
Okay.
That may have been cleared up, or I could just be misremembered.
The language in section 1, subsection A5 of Article 5, which speaks to the comptroller, which is the same language that applies to both the council president and the council members, states that, quote, this provision shall not preclude an elected comptroller from seeking other elected offices within Baltimore City after 2 consecutive terms as comptroller.
Okay. Got it.
Terrell,
all right,
the other thought that I had, I know I don't know, I'm just an anxious planner, so I apologize in advance. I'm one of those people that likes to, know exactly what I'm doing in 3 weeks from now. But, we do have a lot of new changes and and recommendations from the council. I don't know if those are things we need to separate out by committee and dig into those. In some sense, I feel like our committee has a little bit of an easier job than other committees. And I'm just wondering, I haven't looked at the new council recommendations, but how do we want to fit that into our process?
Oh, that's a good question. Do we have those already? Are they in the folder?
So the document that was included in the original binder is up to date through that date. The first date, I think, was November 7th. However, there have been additional charter amendments introduced. Most recently, by the council president, has introduced a provision that would adjust the process for how redistricting operates every 10 years.
Okay.
But I can run a search to see what else has been put out. And again, I can post it to our Google Drive in addition, just so it's there for everybody to review.
Can you do that, please? But then I'm also looking, which one of these affect our amendments? So I'm looking at accounts payable. Yep, so that's there. That's one of ours. Department of Real Estate, that's part of ours.
Yeah, that was my question, Ben and Terrell. Which one of the ones from the binder should we be paying attention to?
Ben, would you be able to delineate that for us?
I mean, I'm happy to indicate what I think would fall under the purview of the committee, but if you think it applies to the committee, talk about it. There's no hard and fast rule about what y'all can discuss and work through.
All right. So I'm just taking note. Let me just think about this, and this is why we've got to pause. All right. So we've got Article 5. Let me just pause and take a deep breath and get a sense of like how we structure this. Let's think about this. So let's get the presentations next. And then I feel like after we get presentations, we all add comments to the 2018 and the council notes. And then we start sort of do a final review of the various sections. Does that make sense?
There's going to be some overlap in those. I think we discussed during the last meeting that we can't wait to talk about the various sections of the charter while individual elected officials or certain agencies get back to us with their thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Now, my thinking is that we ask them to speak, to present as immediately, sort of as soon as possible. They may need some time to organize, but so how about this? At the next meeting, why don't we look at 2018 comments and the council resolution, and then we begin sort of presentations thereafter. Any thoughts on that?
When we talk about the council resolutions, are we talking about the ones that are still in committee or the ones that have been, because there are two types of proposals out there, ones that have already been processed and adopted by the council at large. Those are already going to be on the ballot. We can't do anything about them. Then there's the council proposals that are still kicking around in committee. Those, I'm assuming that those are the ones that you want to hear from or you want to hear about, discuss. Is that correct?
That's a good question. Do we need to consider any of those that have already been enacted? Do we need to do anything with those?
I think we just need to understand what the context is and any recommendations that we currently are looking at.
Okay. So let's do that. So let's plan at the next meeting. We're going to look at everything from 2018 and the council resolutions for what's already passed.
And pending, presumably as well. Both.
Passed and pending. Yeah. And then we'll be sending the email asking for presentations, and then we'll go from there. We'll go back and start tracking our objectives. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, everybody, please share your thoughts. And I think we've got a clear step for next time. And then Ben, you're going to add those two documents, 2018 and council review, to the drive, and then we can start making comments along the way.
Yes.
All right, and then Ben, I'm going to email you now, and we're going to chat tomorrow about how we email for presentations.
Sounds good.
Any other thoughts? Anything we're missing? All right, and then
do we?
Meeting.
Sorry, Terrell. Ben, I was just wondering about that update on the procurement reform stuff. I know some of it's not public yet, but if there are impacts for us, particularly related to this, I don't know, just any timeline that we should be aware of.
I don't have any more detail than you do right now.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Well, doing my best.
You're doing great. You're wonderful, and we're very grateful for you.
Happy to help.
Okay. All right. So we got some clarity, and we are only 10 minutes over. Any other thoughts? We don't need to vote to close, right?
Think about it.
All right.
No, you can just
I think we're good.
adjourn the meeting.
Okay, and I just like to check just because I do. Any comments about the feedback of how we've approached this? Anything we should do differently? Anything? How are folks feeling, and what's your sense?
I thought it was a really good meeting. I thought that, talking to the comptroller was really great. I thought there was a lot of ideas on the table, and there's a lot of discussion that can come of that, and good things and bad things. So let's see where we go. It was really good.
Okay. Julianne said she enjoyed the conversation and the questions. All right. Well, if you think we need to do something in a different way, please let me know. You can email me, or my cell phone number is at the bottom of my email. So, all right. Have a wonderful evening, folks.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Terrell.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.